Welcome to episode 2 of Women, Sex, God, Power, the podcast that you didn't know that you needed, but secretly have always dreamt of having. There have been quite a few requests for me to start a podcast, in all fairness. And I thought if I was going to name it anything, I would give it a title that encapsulates everything I talk about, everything I have spoken about thus far. And this is a podcast, essentially, that is exploring the extraordinary evolution that we're moving through as a collective consciousness, as women continue to reclaim more of their autonomy and their power of expression, their power of sexuality, outside of the patriarchal masculine constructs that have dominated their life for so many eons, and what that means for men and their manhood and their masculinity. We're also going to be looking at what it means to live a spiritually conscious life in a way that allows us to bring more of our expression onto this earth, and in a way that allows us to discover our unique, authentic imprint, what we are here to individually offer up in our soul expression, in our creative aliveness. And I thought I would just kick off with the topic of sexuality and conscious sex, because I think at this particular time in our evolution, one of the most important topics that I feel that we need to discuss, perhaps more than anything even, is the way that we engage with our sexuality, and how our relationship with sex and sexuality pretty much impacts our relationship with everything else. Money, our creative expression, what we have the potential and ability to manifest, how we relate to one another in relationships, how passionate we feel, how healthy we are, how vital we are. And I don't want to shame men on this particular episode when we're talking about conscious sexuality and sex and how men really engage with sex, because I'm aware that when it comes to mastering our relationship with our sexuality, it takes a lifetime. This is the most powerful creative force in the universe. It created you and I. It has created everything in existence. So there should be no shame, and there should be no feelings of repression or guilt around discussing this topic. And yet there are, because of the religious programming so many of us have been raised with, but also because of the way that we have taken sex and sexual energy and distorted it and layered it with so many forms of perversion, that every single time I mention sex, and particularly around men, there is an immediate feeling of shame and guilt that comes up. There is an inability for men to have mature conversations about sex and sexuality without reverting back to this childish, boyish form of consciousness where they're like a little teenager that's just beginning to discover what it feels like to touch their penis or their genitals. And for a lot of women, it can be the same, right? When I say things to women, which I say all the time, learn to masturbate more, like learn what it actually feels like to be inside of your own body, learn what your yoni feels like, learn what you like, get used to exploring your pussy and your body in that way. There's so much shame and embarrassment around this topic. It saddens me deeply that we have such distorted relationship with sex and sexuality, because if we take sex out of the equation and we don't talk about it, then it stays in the collective shadow, and it continues to play out in this distorted, perverted, corrupt way. And it influences us to have a relationship with ourselves and with women and men that is very dysfunctional, very unconscious. Your sexual energy is your power. It's your manifestation power. It's your creative power. A sexually healthy woman or man is also a woman and man that is in charge of their own destiny. They know how to direct their own destiny. They know how to co-create with the universe. They know how to co-create with the powers that be. And they also know how to engage with the opposite gender in a healthy way, in a way that is intimate and loving and conscious. And when I talk to men about the topic of sex, usually the very first thing that I imagine comes to mind for most men is porn, naked images of women, women being sexually objectified. I'm saying for the vast majority of men, for the average man walking on this planet right now, his association with sex is largely porn. Getting off to women, women's images on the internet, women's images on OnlyFans, using women and the feminine as a vessel and a tool through which to offload his unresolved trauma, his rage, his repressed emotions. And when a man has that kind of distorted relationship with women and the feminine in sex, that relationship is carried into his relationship with everything else. A man's relationship with sex is carried into his relationship with everything else. And we can see that from the dysfunctional political leaders and politicians. Sorry, I just said the same thing twice. We can see that from the men in power on this planet, how dysfunctional they are. You best believe that their relationship with sex and their penis is their relationship with the collective, with other humans, is a reflection of their relationship with their own sexuality. So when I talk about the topic of sex and sexuality to most men, it's layered with images and associations that are heavily centered around objectifying the female body. And it's very hard to have mature conversations with men about sex, about women, about engaging with women and the feminine in a healthy manner when that man's consciousness and psyche has been so heavily infiltrated from the get-go, from day one, with very, very unhealthy and dysfunctional ideals around sex, around dominating women, around dominating the feminine, around having vast amounts of, women that he can sleep with in order to feel like he's more of a man. It becomes a conquest. And that energy of I need to dominate and I need to assert my dominance over women and the feminine is carried into his relationship with sex, with intimacy. And it becomes about, again, using women as a tool and an object through which he can derive a sense of his own masculinity, rather than engaging with women in a way that is awakened, considerate, careful, sensitive. And a friend of mine said something the other day, and I've had this thought very, very often, that the consciousness of our planet and our earth is feminine. So a man who is in touch with the consciousness of the earth, who works with the earth, who is aligned with nature, is also a man that knows how to handle the feminine within women. He understands that the feminine is this wild, undulating, dynamic force, and a force that is also inherently sensitive and also very fragile, equally as fragile as it is formidable. And when men are disconnected from nature, when they are disconnected from the earth, when they do not have a conscious relationship with the earth as a whole, that is carried into their relationship with women and sex. And then you are dealing with a man that has no intimacy with his own self, no awareness of his own body, no awareness of how he's emotionally feeling. And that is projected and offloaded onto women. And as a consequence, you have an entire society and collective of people who are walking around completely disconnected from their being, in a dysfunctional relationship with one another, in a dysfunctional relationship with their own sexuality. If you look at the devastation that men who have unconscious relationships with sex, how that impacts the women they engage with, it's absolutely devastating. Is absolutely devastating. The amount of women who have no connection to their own yoni, their own body, who don't even know what it feels like to have a sexual experience where they feel safe and where they feel listened to and where they feel respected by a man, and where they feel like there's time for them to unravel themselves, time for them to unravel the fullness of who they are, the fragility that they carry, the depth of who they are. They don't feel that there's space to do that in relationship with a man, because men come with this energy of force, and I need to make her come now. I need to make her come because I need to prove how much of a man I am. And he's getting all of that from porn. He's getting all of that from porn. I mean, I haven't watched much porn, but the porn that I did watch, I just remember like this energy of force and this energy of dominance, and I need to get her to come and I need to dominate. And that's so far from what real sex and transformational healing sex looks like, because sex and sexual energy in its essence is pure healing energy. It's pure healing energy. And if you know how to have a truly powerful sexual experience, you will know that sex has the ability to completely change and revolutionize your consciousness and open up different dimensions within your body and within your psyche, like psychedelics. But it has an even greater potential through your sexual experiences, through your conscious sexual experiences. There is even greater potential to reach these heightened states of consciousness that allow you to come into divine union with the consciousness of this universe. And then from that place, you become an unstoppable force with a wide open heart that has the ability and potential to nourish and nurture every person that you come in contact with. Because you are operating from a place of true sexual aliveness, and true sexual aliveness has nothing to do with dominance. It has nothing to do with having more orgasms or even bigger orgasms. Again, all of that is the distortion of porn. Truly meaningful sex and a deep sexual experience leaves you feeling wide open in your body, in your being, in your heart. And so much of the addiction, the sexual addictions that most men have, leave them sexually dependent on porn, on OnlyFans, on the consumption of women and the feminine, because they're not having real sex. They're not having real sex. Real sex is so nourishing that it will leave you full for weeks on end. Weeks on end. You won't have to do anything physically because you're so nourished from the experience of what that energy has opened up in your body. But when we have men on this planet who have such a distorted relationship with sex, and they've never somatically felt what it feels like, not just at a physical level or an emotional level, but at a spiritual level, a level of consciousness of my body has just been blown wide open. My psyche has just been blown wide open by this sexual experience. That sexual energy has penetrated every part of my being and opened up places within me that I didn't even know existed, has given me the opportunity to access other parts of my psyche, other parts of my being, my creative potential as a human, as God rather, manifest in human form that I didn't even know existed until I had this experience. That's real sex. And most people on this planet are not having that experience sexually. They're having a very one-dimensional, very physical, very, very damaging and very destructive experience. Especially men. But then men are carrying that into their relationship with women. And what you have as a consequence is this war of agendas where women don't want to have sex with men anymore because they have felt so invaded by the masculine. They have felt so invaded by men. They have felt so infiltrated and so disrespected and harmed and dysregulated in their nervous system because so many of these men, whether deliberately or completely unconsciously, have brought their relationship with porn, with OnlyFans, into their relationship with women. Learning to engage with your sexuality in a way that is conscious, and the word that's coming to me right now is just slower. Slow the fuck down. Where are you trying to get to? It's like people are their relationship with sex is like their relationship with life. They're busy trying to get to the finish line. They're so busy trying to get to the finish line, the orgasm, the grand finale. And there's no sensitivity or listening or deeper awareness that is developed in the process of engaging with another human being. But particularly women who are so much more sensitive and are receiving that energy of men and the masculine very much as an invasion into their body. Women need and require that sensitivity so deeply. And when we continue to have a planet full of men who are so dysfunctional in their relationship with their own bodies and their own sexuality, we have absolute fucking disaster and devastation as a consequence. Like I said at the beginning, your relationship with sex is your relationship with everything else. It's your relationship with money, with time, with intimacy, with creativity, with discipline. So if you can master your relationship with sex, you can master your relationship with anything else on this planet, in your reality, in your life. If you learn how to harness that energy in a way that is conscious and careful, and I've lost the vocabulary that I need in this moment. Universe, penetrate my mind with vocabulary. If you learn how to engage with your sexual energy in a way that is wholehearted, yes, wholehearted, from a place in which you are open in your heart, then it's going to change the way you relate to everything on this planet. Sexual energy, again, is healing energy. And so many people go into this experience with no awareness of the potential harm that they're causing, again, especially men, when it comes to their relating to women. So I would love it if we could just remove all the shame. And that's the point of this podcast, by the way. That's why it's called Women, Sex, God, Power. That is the point of this podcast, is to remove all the shame, all the tabooness, all the guilt, all the distortion that has been fed to us, that has been infiltrated into the human collective because of porn, because of mainstream music, because of Netflix rom-coms. Oh my fucking God. The sex in Netflix rom-coms drives me fucking insane. It drives me insane, you guys. It makes me so angry. I want to jump into the screen and I want to interrupt the sex scene that is being filmed. Do you remember Bridgerton? When they, I think it was the first season? Yes, it was the first season of Bridgerton. And they were like, the couple were having their first sexual experience. And the guy was going so hard. And then she came after like a minute. And I was like, oh my God. I cannot believe this is the sex that people are watching. And then they are going into their partnerships and relationships thinking this is what sex looks like. This is how sexual experiences should be. And this is what women want. It drives me fucking insane. If I had the power to teleport into a Netflix production and interrupt the sex scenes and go, no, that is not how it is done, sir. That is not how it is done. If I have the power to do that, I would. Oh, okay, I think that's enough this episode. But we will be talking more about this. And I would appreciate you guys giving me feedback. What would you like to hear me talk about more? Was this episode useful? Did you find it enjoyable? Did you find it entertaining? Did you find it enlightening? I definitely want to continue exploring this topic. Let me know what you would like to hear me speak on. If you'd like me to go deeper in terms of the realm of sex and sexuality. And I will see you next time.